Ladies and gentlemen, this is where it all comes down to. This is where we're going to see which teams are going to stay in the open division or will have to go back to the open division and which teams will make it all the way to the pro circuit, man. It is time for the Crucible of HGC Korea. Your commentators of today will be Tetcher and Kendrick Swish. It is my honor to welcome you back, Tetcher. Really cool to have you back after all your travel, after all your previous Crucible action for Europe that you had. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling excited. The European Crucible was absolutely amazing. North American Crucible as well. Both regions were able to crown a new member into their respective leagues in the form of ePunks and Scythe Esports. And now, me and you together will find out if South Korea can do the same in what is your first ever Crucible. Nice!
That is true, actually. I've never had the honor and pleasure of casting any Crucible up to this point, so new experience for me as well, and boy, am I looking forward to this, because similar to the other major regions like NA and EU, we're going to have some packed matchups here today, because by no means is this a one-sided matter in which we have a clear favorite coming into this, because in Korea too, we do have some pretty awesome open division teams, and especially the team that we're going to witness today. This is Ddung. There are some really big names in the roster, aren't there, Tetcher?
Yes, there are some very memorable names. In fact, I've lost the player list. There we go. We have Hero and Got Kimchi, both very experienced players. I believe we found out that Crow also had a little bit of pro experience, but more importantly, we do have a slight roster change, don't we, Kendrick?
Yes, and that, of course, implies that the main warrior of Ddung is no longer playing with the team, at least temporarily or permanently. We do not know if there are some permanent changes going on or if it's just for this important Crucible match. But Ping Ping is replaced by H82. And if you've been following HGC Korea, if you've watched a lot of Wolf and G-Clef, then you will recognize that name because he's been playing for teams such as Miracle in the past. He's been a longtime veteran in the pro scene, a legendary Artanis player as well, good warrior, and that's exactly what we need here for Ddung, and that's going to be the role that he's going to play them.
Yeah, one of my his Artanis play back when he was on Tempest way back in the day was absolutely one of my favorites and one of the first ever shows of actual good Artanis professional play.
Yeah.
And now he has this chance to make his way back into the pro division. So it is Ddung today, aka this is Patrick, as you guys saw in that lovely interview. But we also are going to have, of course, another Crucible match tomorrow where our winners of the South Korean Open Division playoffs, Trog is best, will play against G-Luck, a team that me and Kendrick have a little bit of extra fun this for, due to the fact that, of course, their coach is now a coach for a Chinese team in the form of Zeron coaching CE.
Yeah, very cool. There's a lot of parallels you can sometimes draw between, China and Korea. And as you said, Zeron, former player for Gluck, now tries his luck in China over there with CE. Unfortunately, wasn't all that successful because CE did not make it to BlizzCon. A little bit of an outrage there, a little bit of an upset that one of the most prestigious teams in China is no longer with the International Pro Division there at BlizzCon. So instead, we're going to have the 1 and BTG for China. Only 2 slots, of course. And for Korea, we have Miracle actually replacing Blossom for the first time in a long while that Blossom won't be representative for Korea at an international stage.
I mean, it feels right. As much as I love Blossom, as much as I love Blossom, if the team that beats Genji twice doesn't go to BlizzCon, the only team to do so, no other team has achieved that over this year. Dignitas haven't. They've had their opportunity. Tempest haven't. Ballistics haven't. No one has defeated Genji and I'm remembering back to first Eastern Clash. Ballistics beat them once there. But I don't think they beat them in league play, so they're close. But no one has been able to beat Genji in the same way that Miracle has. So seeing them show up to BlizzCon is going to be incredibly exciting.
And there's a certain irony there as well, right? Because if you think back all the way to 2016, when both teams were still united under the same mother team, MVP, right? We still had MVP Black and MVP Miracle. And of course, the players are by no means the same anymore. A lot of things have changed, but still, there is this, this cry of the past in which you could say that this one sister team can finally beat the other, the big favorites, of course. And Miracle is going to be a team to be on the lookout for at BlizzCon. One 100%. And as you said, the other Open Division team, by the way, to get back into the Crucible a little bit more, Trog is best. They were a team that I didn't really have on the radar. I did have a little bit of a conversation with G-Clef to talk about the Crucible teams because he knows them very well too. And he said Ddung is actually the clear favorite. But for some reason, man, Trog is best. They came out swinging. And a lot of those games were very close. And I had the feeling that Ddung could have won certain games, certain rounds. And we saw that in the previous World Tetra, right? Where Ping Ping said he made a crucial mistake, and that's why they lost, not because this is Trog is best, sorry, is the better team.
Absolutely, and those parallels exist in the other regions as well. We talk about the European Crucible.
Yeah.
E-Punks were clearly the best team for the entire phase, the entire season of the Open Division. They lost like 4 maps total over 7 weeks. It was mental. But it all came down to the playoffs. That's the one day that gives you that seeding option, that ability to choose your opponents, and that's the day they lost. Ddung now find themselves in a similar position. The question is, can they pull off a similar victory? Whereas E-Punks, they won in a 4-0. Can Ddung do the same against Supernova?
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about the Open Division teams now in Korea. And of course, we have the same system here as in the other major regions, meaning that the winner of the playoffs is going to choose their pro opponent, right? So it was Trog is best, and they chose Gluck. And who can fault them, man? Gluck still waiting for their first map victory in the ongoing phase. They haven't really had a good ride up to this point. And Supernova, on the other hand, speaking of upsets, nobody really expected them to drop down to the Crucible when they played against Felice, because Felice, on paper, was the much weaker team.
Absolutely. Yeah, Felice looked a lot weaker, but it all came down once again to that last week. It always seems to be the end games. I don't know what to say about that. It was a 3-2. It's unexpected, so it's a rough opponent to have to face, and it's why those playoff games can be just so important.
Yeah. And that match you were talking about, the 3-2 between Felice and Supernova on the last play day, it was just crazy to see Felice bounce back. And if there's one thing that Ddung can actually capitalize on in this best of 7 against Supernova, I think, is the fact that Supernova may be a little shaken, and they show a lot of weakness when it comes down to closing games, right? Because against Felice, they had more than one opportunity in that game 1, for example, on Infernal Shrines, where they had a 4-level lead. And still, they weren't able to close out the game. And at that point, you really have to question whether they have what it takes to stabilize in this Crucible.
You really do. So just a little bit of house cleaning before we jump too much into the analysis of the two teams here.
Yeah.
And that is, we already mentioned some of a roster swap in this case with
for Ddung.
For Ddung. We also are going to be calling some of the players by different names. This mostly comes into effect tomorrow.
Yeah.
But today, Got Kimchi, Crow, Hero, these are all the same. But Stretch Your Back once in a while, we have been informed apparently would prefer to go by the pseudonym of Dr. Spine, which is as good, if not better, in terms of just cool names. Sounds like a super villain name, and I love it.
Yeah, almost goes into the direction of Dr. Octopus there. And he too had things coming out of his spine, right? So maybe there's a reference that we do not know of. But yeah, Dr. Spine, no longer Stretch Your Back, although both names were marvelous, as you said. And then, of course, the tank position swap, as we mentioned it earlier here. As far as we're aware of, there are no changes for the pro teams. So no player swaps or no changes for either Gluck nor... of course, Supernova, but I'm not even sure if they're allowed to make any changes. I don't think so for the Crucible.
I mean, these are maybe I don't actually know.
Unless there's a serious reason, like illness going on, of course. But
I mean, this is for starters just fun, because when else would me and you ever have the possibility to cast these teams? Because unfortunately, they're a little bit too low to make it to the BlizzCons and the Eastern Clashes and stuff like the mid-season brawls.
Right.
So this is really mine and your only opportunity to cast these bottom-tier teams of Korea. So it's going to be nice to see it through a Carter eyes as opposed to a Spectator eyes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Korea is always a special treat, you know? And especially since the last mid-season brawl, I think it's safe to say that if you take the grand scheme of things into account, right? How many good Korean teams we have that perform well internationally compared to the other regions, even Europe. we have to admit, then the Korean region is currently the best in the world. No doubts. We have teams like Ballistics, Tempest, even Miracle showing up big time. Gen.G, of course, we don't even have to mention those guys. They're just looking super strong all across the board. And I think it's safe to say that Korea as a region goes in as the clear favorite to BlizzCon. And if you can make it into this prestigious league, HGC Korea, right, as a former amateur team, that is probably the coolest thing you could achieve.
I mean, the Blizzard released the HGC rankings, the power rankings, they believe, heading into BlizzCon.
Right.
And it was incredibly well done. I really did agree with almost anything. But there was like one area of the bracket where I was like, this is where I see chaos being. And unfortunately, most of those teams aren't in the same bracket, the same group. But BTG and then Liquid and then Miracle was what they ranked. That three, depending on who shows up on the day, that's where I can see variants start to come in. I think Heroes Half was like above or below. I think they were like a little bit above there, but it's pretty close.
Speaking of which, Tisha, I'm not sure if you've read the article, but our friend Moonprayer from Tempestorm, who does a wonderful job at collecting all the data, you know, on the website and throws out amazing Heroes content in general, but he made a little bit of a power level list. Did you see it?
I did see. I compared the two. I agree with one more than the other, but they both have their merits.
All right. What would you say about his assessment of the Chinese region? Do you agree with it, or do you think?
I think his assessment of the Chinese region is very good. Okay. I really enjoyed that. It was his assessment of the American region that I was slightly disagreeing on.
Oh, let us know. What do you disagree with?
I think he ranked them too highly. Simple as. Both the American teams did really well at the Western Clash, and both the teams, in my opinion, due to roster changes, seem a bit weak.
And I mean, there was a little bit of Tempo Storm bias going on, of course, but I tend to agree with you. I'm still not sure if it's set in stone that NA is clearly better than China. I think
it's pretty set in stone.
You think it's pretty set in stone? All right.
I think so. If there was a time for China to beat NA, it would probably be this BlizzCon. Because, like I said, the American teams look a little bit weaker at the moment. But the Chinese teams aren't a huge amount better than they were last year. All we've had is like a changing of the guards, where the better teams got a little bit worse and the worst teams got a little bit better. I'd say we're about the same level, if not like 4 or 5% better. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to be really interested, though, in when it comes to the NA region, right? If you've watched the Crucible, for example, or the playoffs over there in NA, then you will have found out that the meta there is just completely bonkers right now. The NA teams are playing compositions that I've never seen before, that are unlike anything we've seen in Europe and Korea, and it works for them. But the real question for me is it going to work on the international stage against Korean teams, against European teams, maybe even against Chinese teams? That is going to be interesting. Or do you think they're going to switcheroo and just play normal again?
I think China might play normal. The American teams will most play normal. There's always a tournament meta of these things. After the first 2 days, everything will normalize a little. Overall, just so you all know, this gentleman, we're having a quick delay due to the fact that there is a sound issue with one of the players' computers. But to me, like when I was over, I hadn't done all of my North America research when I came over to do the Crucible. So the Crucible, even though I'm aware that's the lower level, was my first show of the American meta outside of the few games I'd been able to catch from Tempo Storm and Heroes Hearth. And watching that was just, hey, reverse ab Lucio. Hey, Valor compositions. Hey, this solo tank
Body
Blaze.
Slam Garrosh, why not?
Body Slam Garrosh. Like that, I can see maybe value because that healing's dope, but not this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching it and I was very, very confused. And then what didn't confuse me so much is they picked it. Because, of course, if you pick something and it works, then fantastic. If you pick something and it doesn't work repeatedly and you keep doing it, that's when I start to take issue. It's what I took issue with at HGC China. It's what I took issue with at HGC EU. It's what I took issue with in Open Division. And it's what I take issue with NA.
Yeah, at this point, I don't even know what makes me more confused. The fact that Reverse Lucio was picked or that it won. So I just... don't even know what to think anymore. But either way, be it as it may, I think this year's BlizzCon has the potential to be one of the coolest tournaments we've seen in a very long while, because there is a little bit of turmoil going on right now. Is Gen G really, unbeatable, undefeatable? I mean, Miracle has a word to say about that. They showed us twice that it is indeed possible. And what can Dignitas pull off? Is Dignitas still in that tip-top condition that we know them to be? A lot of time has passed since Midseason Brawl, but here, ladies and gentlemen, we're finally able to present to you a couple of stats here. Here are the lineups for Ddung on the left-hand side and Supernova in the reds on the right-hand side.
Yeah, we have H82, Dr. Spine, Hero Crow, and got Kimchi for Ddung.
Yeah, that looks really good. Like, especially H82 and Hero, man. Those two players are going to have to carry. They bring in the most experience by far in that roster, professional experience, that is. But we also have No Chat. We have players of his caliber on the side of Supernova, and that is no slouch to just overcome,
Absolutely. Like you said, No Chat is just an absolute god. I cannot wait to see what he can bring to the table. We have two just big, long-time veterans, like you say, with H82 and No Chat. So seeing those two battle is going to be definitely one of my highlights of the day. But both teams are going to be preparing for their matchup, fighting, of course, for the chance to stay in the HGC Korean Pro Division, or, in the case of Ddung, to steal away the Supernova spot.
Yeah, and here we see the slight favorites, I would say. Not a big favorite by any means, given the fact that they looked rather shaky in their last game against Feliz. We see Supernova, the stronger of the two teams from the Pro Division still, especially when compared to Gluck, who I, at this point, can't even see make it. Of course, I could be wrong, because Trog is best too, looked rather good. And although some of the victories against Ddung were a little shaky, a little undeserved at the time, they're definitely not a team to be trifled with.
Absolutely. So for now, we are prepared. We will hopefully be getting ready for the game shortly. Once again, we were told there was a delay, which is why we have not started yet.
Yes.
But we will be getting underway as soon as possible. Just to go back to BlizzCon quickly before we dive properly into Korea, someone actually mentioned, like, when we were talking about the NA weird stuff, like, oh, but NA won the first BlizzCon with Murky. That is true. That's not the relevant part.
Are people still bringing that one up?
They are, but what it reminded me of is the return of Fan. This is going to be, I believe, if I'm correct, Fan's first BlizzCon since that first one.
Crazy, man.
That's a pretty big deal.
Like, a lot of people, talked about some of the recent announcements in the pro scene, like JPL, for example, leaving Dignitas after BlizzCon. But then if you think about it, for how long some of the players have actually been playing the game professionally on a day-to-day basis, right? Giving their best, playing 6 to out, maybe even 10 hours a day. Pretty crazy at some point to see how long players like Fan, absolute legends, man, have been invested. But we're jumping all the way over from the tales of legends like Fan into the Crucible here of Korea. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see the overlay here. Yep, Ddung. This time not even using the Korean spelling. Thank you very much, production. That makes it much easier for us to follow it. On the left-hand side, first pick, first ban, facing Supernova in that game 1. I think the map was Dragonfire, wasn't it?
I believe so as well. We are getting underway now, though. And it is the first ban. Apparently, we are playing it on the same patch as the playoffs, so pre-Brightwing Kerrigan.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. By the way, first map is Curse of Hollow, my mistake. Dragon was banned out by Ddung, and Battlefield of Eternity was banned out by Nova, Supernova. So those two maps we're not going to face today.
Starting off with the Genji ban. Back previously, this was a fairly consistent ban for Ddung. Not as consistent as you would like. No, it wasn't actually. I've got that wrong. During the playoffs, they banned it once, but overall it was banned more consistently by Trog is best, and Trog actually picked it a couple times as well, due to Ddung not focusing on it as a ban. Yeah, very true. Diablo, of course, still that unkillable force sometimes that you just can't get rid of no matter how hard you try. Yep. Genji banned as well. It's been a common theme around the globe. Sorry, go ahead. It's interesting, actually, that we see that Genji ban, because Supernova haven't played it this phase. They haven't played it, 28 times. And they're also not first pick. They haven't actually played it. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Ddung perhaps falling into a little of the trap that we saw in the playoffs, where not doing as much research on their opponent, just sticking with blind meta.
Maiev, of course, also a very strong hero, especially in Korea. Very popular as well. And on maps like Cursed Hollow, where there's a lot of choke points, where she can trap you in, where she can catch you from, you know, it's definitely a safe ban. But what is Ddung going to conjure to summon up here to start things off with here? It's the Hanzo, and if you think about Cursed Hollow, Tetra, there's two bosses. There's Mercenary Camps, Hanzo with all that PvE damage that he brings to the table, all the vision as well. A very solid PvE racing car.
Exactly. Hanzo is just fantastic. Big CC assassin once he gets that level 10. Reina, smaller amounts of CC to begin with, but of course synergizes beautifully with that Deckard Cain being the support pickup very early here for Supernova. Very sensible.
Yeah.
They've played it a fair amount this season. Not one of their highest pick rates, but it's up there enough to show the priority they have towards it.
All right, Gyros coming through with Whitemane, and that is a duo that I'm pretty sure we're going to see many times at BlizzCon, if there are no upcoming balance changes to change either of those two heroes, because they work so well together. All that armor that Gyros brings to the table will be very useful to keep him alive with that consistent poke healing coming in from Whitemane. If you've ever played against it, you can know, or you basically know how annoying it can be.
Junkrat removed, again, one of the more consistently picked assassins by Ddung, so Supernova removing that very effectively. Also, not falling into the trap we were talking about earlier of just sticking with their standard bans.
Right.
They banned a lot of Sergeant Hammer during league play, which makes sense if you look at their opponents they had with like Gen G, with Tempest, etc., big Sergeant Hammer teams. So it makes sense they have that many bans on the hero, but instead they've done their research on Ddung and removed one of their top tier assassins.
Yeah, and they themselves banned the Sergeant Hammer, as you said. When there's a Deckard Cain deployed, then, you know, this combo is very dangerous. I mean, there is a Rainer already, so sometimes you're confident enough to say, you know what, they're not going to pick two auto attackers, right, because we just picked blinds against it. But, you know, they still might end up doing it anyways.
Falstad coming in, 1 and 5
double
for
global
Supernova this phase. The double global, like you say, as well, with a very immobile frontliner for Ddung. So hard engage, already looking to be a bit of a problem with disengage tools like the Mighty Gust now available. This is going to be interesting. Ddung, I think they need to pick a offlaner with a bit more immediate dive potential if they want any chance of actually getting a fight. And there it is, a double, in fact. Blaze with, of course, his thrusters, his jet propulsion, and the potential for the Thrall Sundering if they need that extra bit of engage potential. I love this last two pick.
Yeah, the double global, of course, automatically shuts down heroes like Abathur as well, who are very popular in Cursed Hollow sometimes, because Abathur struggles against globals. Normally, you get outpushed, you get out-soaked by the globals. You also can't really move out on the map too much to soak with your slug body, because either Falstad or Dehaka might be able to catch you. So yeah, really cool double global pick there by Supernova, and the Anubarak. I would actually call Anubarak the shining superstar right now in the international scene, because he's coming out of nowhere, but he's had so much success, not just in Korea, but also in other regions.
Yeah, when he's played by someone who can play him exceptionally well, he looks like he's like a shining star. Otherwise, that's quite loud. I need to turn that down.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, when he's played by someone who knows what they're doing with him, he looks absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, he can look like a detriment to the team. We saw in HGC China where we have players who play a little bit over-aggressive and they just get squashed like a bug.
Exactly, especially by very counter-aggressive heroes like that Diablo, right? Anubarak goes in too deep, and there's a wall nearby. Diablo is gonna melt that beetle when he doesn't really have any escape tools available because he used that bird charge aggressively. For now, though, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce those teams once again for you. On the blue side, it is Team Ddung, the Open Division team trying to make their way into the Pro Division. And on the right-hand side, it is Supernova, a team that you might be familiar with if you followed Korea, with Wolf and G-Clef and Rapid presenting the league to you.
We already see a 4-man rotation without Dehaka heading down to this bot lane. Now, this will likely turn into Dehaka once he has soaked the minion wave here, tunneling up to top lane, having Falstad fly to mid so that they don't miss any XP that way, due to Falstad being a little bit too far away to fly all the way up to top lane. And right now, their rotation route being cut off. You can see Dehaka currently just body soaking against Blaze. waiting for someone to come up here and relieve him of duty, basically. Falstad moving into position. Looks like he might just walk up. Seeing as Dahaka's already cleared the lane, Dahaka can, of course, take the global.
All right, and already with that Anubarak, you can pull off fancy strategies like that early push, you know, because those beetles, they will actually intercept the focus of defensive structures like a fort, like those towers. So they basically got that bottom tower pretty much for free. And with that double global, of course, they can make sure that they get back to the other lanes in time so they won't miss too much experience in the early game. Soak. Bentham already on that Rainer, by the way, skating his way through those minions, through those mercenaries. Sorry,
that was a thing. As we see Crow starting off on his own team's mercenaries as well. Deckard having a bit of a dance. He's pretty comfortable here. He knows he has an Uberak nearby, so he has assistance if he requires it. But overall, the laning setup seems to be very relaxed by these two teams. They want mercenaries, they want experience, they're not out for blood just yet. Of course, this is more efficient for Supernova, as the less immediate kills happen, the better they're going to be once the objective comes around, because double global means double lanes worth of soaking when the objective's up.
Yeah, and that is going to be very much the name of the game here. Hero back on this Hanzo, by the way, had a really strong performance there in the in the Open Division playoffs. H82 on that Garrosh. I'm super excited to see what he will bring to the table. And Thrall, I mean, I've got the stats right in front of me here. When Felice played against Supernova, they lost twice when Felice deployed the Thrall. So maybe a little bit of a weak point here. They maybe don't have the awareness to sometimes predict the flanks, to sometimes burst them down in time, because Thrall can be a very tricky hero to deal with, right, Tetra? He's got great self-sustain. Just when you think you have him down, he just pops that self-heal up from somewhere. And, of course, a good, decent Sundering flank can single-handedly win games.
Yeah, he has self-sustain, like you said, engage potential. He is disruptive. He has poke once he hits the later levels, especially with Thunderstorm and that cooldown reduction from his level 1 talent. It's all and with that poking potential, they might be able to make some pretty decent plays with Scatter Arrow, with that Chain Lightning. If they can poke down what will be the 3 members of Supernova who will be beginning to at least delay this, they might be able to force the point before the globals can arrive.
Yeah, and that is going to be so important, man. You know, kind of finding those sweet spot, finding those time windows where the globals are in cooldown. Cooldown management on the side of Ddung is such an important thing to have here. And I think cooldown management in general is something that is super important in the higher echelons of competitive play. Not just on globals, but also on heroic abilities, and even certain, you know, basic abilities need to be kept in control, need to be kept in check all the time. Look at that strong posture that Ddung has actually established themselves. Supernova can't even pierce through, and that first tribute goes over to the blue team. Here comes Karasu, though, and tries to make that play happen on the Dahaka. Just a little bit off, though.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Dr. Spine is going to get wiped here by No-Chat. Nice rotation by the Falstad. But that was the point we were talking about here. Ddung are able to force the point before the globals are able to rotate. Dahaka, Rushstalker has a wind-up. Falstad, Fly has a wind-up and travel time. If you can force that positioning and bully the squishier frontliner of Supernova, you can start to make the plays. But you can't afford to give away deaths like that.
All right, mercenary camps are being taken. Level 7 is there for Supernova, which is a nice little boon to have. You know, giving up the early tributes is not really the end of the world, especially when you have globals. As long as you get ahead in experience, sooner or later, especially when it comes down to racing level 10, you're going to establish control over those eventually anyways. Now, look at Crow here, in trouble, surrounded by 2. Needs to dodge the stuns, does so successfully, but the body block is too much for him to handle.
Garrosh looking to rotate in, but just getting CC'd by Alex and Bentham. But he's going to be forced to back up here. He will survive. In the meantime, rest of Ddung rotate and start grabbing their Bruiser Camp. They know they have the timing here, and they can use this for the defense of Supernova's Bruiser Camp, which is currently beginning to bully that front middle wall.
All right, middle wall being sieged up here. The blue mercenary camp is coming to help, though, coming to rescue. And that is actually good timing if they save those towers, but I don't think they can. Look at that concave arranged minions set up really nicely here for Supernova, and they're just snowballing away Tetra right now with that double global. Almost an entire level lead here for Supernova.
Yeah, Hero nearly getting killed off 1v1 in the bot lane as well. This is starting to look a little bit shaky coming in here for Ddung here, but they are still in the game. They still have a single tribute, and that's all they're going to need to begin to work themselves back into the game.
All right, and level 10 is getting dangerously close, and You know, if you've ever played a game of Heroes of a Storm where you faced a team that snowballs ahead so early in the game, you're automatically starting to get a little panicky, right? Because you're like, oh man, there's no way we're going to be 10 in time, and they're just going to dominate us. They're going to zone us away from all those objectives easily with their level 10 abilities, and those are going to come online very, very soon here. And then you're going to have Cocoon. You can take away a player. You can interrupt people from casting their abilities, and there's no Li Ming on the side of Ddung. There's no fast tickling damage that can burn those cocoons very fast, with the exception maybe of, you know, a little bit of oil spill and fire from the blaze. So I'm not sure how Ddung is going to handle this situation right now.
Me neither, and that is interesting here. With the level 10s online, they have the Mighty Gust. And like you said, Ddung, they don't really have that opportunity to move on to any objectives yet, which is why they're probably going to be quite glad it's going to be a bit till the next one. However, Supernova making the most of the opportunity. Boss will be started. Blaze will spot that very easily. The oil very nearly holding Alex in that boss route, but not working out.
Yeah. Very close, actually. Blaze, of course, knows what's going on, but the counter response is coming in immediately, and I like that call quite a bit. There's no way that Ddung could have prevented this boss from happening, so they just decide to take their own. But look at that. The double front line coming in here from Supernova to delay this a little bit.
Yeah, Ddung can't interrupt Supernova, but Supernova could certainly interrupt Ddung if they get the opportunity. But with that nice knock-up by H82 there, Haven had to back up so he didn't get hit by the boss route. He lost his engage tool, and they decide that's a good opportunity to back up. Very smart.
Yeah, the boss was actually the 6th team member here coming in for Ddung. Very important, but also good reactions by Garrus, of course. Now, Dehaka in trouble, gets actually pulled back in there and completely wrecked by the boss and the combined efforts of Ddung.
Just absolute devastation there in that fight. However, no chat making the most of that Falstad Global, pushing in the top lane. It's going to get destroyed here with Hero trying to do the same, but he does not have that kind of immediate pushing potential that Falstad does.
Yeah, and Falstad is really good at pushing things down, especially when he goes for that Seasoned Marksman build, which No Chat decided to go for it, because more sustained damage that is kind of independent on mana, the better.
Yeah, that's what will live. This is going to be tier 2 damage in exchange for a fort with 2-2 in terms of tributes. Supernova still holding out ahead here, but Ddung, they're moving out onto the map once again, recontrolling mid. They were able to save their fort down there. But seriously, this fort in the bot lane surviving is such a big deal for Supernova.
Now, I look at some of the heroic abilities on the side of Ddung, and especially with Hanzo, I could have maybe expected a Dragon Strike. And while it may sound like a bad joke at first glance, sometimes Korean teams against Reynor, they will go for Dragon Strike because Reynor is very immobile. And if you lock him down in time, you know, he doesn't really have that much maneuverability to escape the fangs of the Dragon Strike. So we've seen that in the past in Korea, but for now, Ddung is definitely relying on the more reliable tools, if you will. The Dragon's Arrow, of course, way more impactful, quite literally, if it lands on the right target.
Oh yes, big old CC trains potential here with the jet propulsion taunt, the groundbreaker sundering dragon arrow. There's so much CC on this composition.
Going in.
As the Nubarak tries to dive in, but won't land it.
Oh, the bunker is good, protecting Kimchi there a little bit more. The Scarlet Aegis comes through, and the healing is massive for Ddung.
However, H82 has got a fantastic flank. He's 2v1ing right now while his team tries to turn it round, but they get zoned away by the Dehaka here. Crow getting dropped down. Great drag again, but this time the intercession keeps Dr. Spine alive for the moment. Can they chase him down? Maybe they can with the curse active. Diving forward, they miss Hero, but they find Dr. Spine.
Dr. Spine is no more, but here we have an interesting duel going on. Alex trying to kite the Hanzo, but fails to do so. And Hero with a consolation kill here, saving at least a little bit of time for his teammates. But look at Supernova. They smell the blood in the water, and they want the bottom lane dead.
And for good reason, because they're putting on quite the show here. Continuing to push in, try to take this first tier 2 of the game. Trying to grab that key, but look at this zoning that H82 is offering. There's not even structures here. He's just trying to be a distraction.
That he is. All right. So, yeah, 3 levels, and I think Supernova won't stop there because they basically are holding all the trump cards in their hands right now, and they can do whatever they want to. The map is almost entirely painted in red, so we've seen this before. My alarm bells are ringing, Tetcher, because this is exactly how Game 1 went against Team Feliz. They had a 4-level lead. It was not Curse Hollow, it was Infernal Shrines, though, but they were not successful at closing out the game. And yet, all the keeps were standing for Ddung. They did a fairly good job defending those.
That they did. The keep surviving means no catapult pressure. This is, of course, fantastic news, especially as Ddung are now 1 tribute away from a curse, where Supernova are 3 away. If they can start to get a turnaround taunt being used, they need to free the White Maid, though, so she doesn't get hard engaged on. It might be too late. Into the fray being used. Got Kimchi gets away, even with the isolation, but H82 is getting dropped here by the scroll of seeing a beautiful stay on and listen, and Kendrick, that gust just brooches them up perfectly, and this bunker delays the inevitable.
It's a massacre, Tetra, right now. That beautiful gust into follow-up Burrow charge, triple stun, baby, and they're gonna wipe the floor with the remainders of Ddung, and they're gonna take the keep and maybe even game 1, Tetra.
What a gorgeous engage there by Supernova, reacting to the counter engage onto a Nubarak with a great move in, getting everyone they needed. Alex, especially with that wraparound, was on point. Beautiful scroll of ceiling, followed up by a beautiful stay a while and listen, and that is gonna be it.
And that is going to be the game 100%. 18% of the core, and down it goes. Supernova exploding in that game number 1, doing such a good job. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that Ddung, they thought they were prepared for the Pro Division teams. Well, they're going to have to prepare even more, because this is a whole different level than what they were used to probably in the Crucible and in the Open Division.
Absolutely. They need to refocus. They might need to change their battle plan here, because that was a schooling coming in here by Supernova, saying you are not ready to face the likes of G-Lug, face the likes of Feelers, etc. All of those other Pro Division teams, even at the lower level, if you can't even beat us. Because right now, Supernova, they don't only want their spots, they want to make a statement.
Exactly. Supernova, they're probably furious and angry that they were even pushed down to the Crucible in the first place, because they probably were under the impression that rightfully this was not their place to be, right? And they're definitely trying to show their fans at home, and of course, they want to prove to themselves that they indeed do still belong into the Pro Division. And if you look at the record of Supernova, I can't even disagree with that statement, right? They were able to take games off Blossom 3-2. They were able to take a map of Miracle as well, the Gen G beaters. So yeah, there is so much potential in that team, and I think Ddung just had to feel it the hard way.
Yeah, they have to find out at some point, and they have to either react to that or fall. They have to like I'm struggling to do the sentence without just using the words "get good." But right now, that's what they have to do. They've got to step up their game. Yeah. There we go. Why didn't I come up with that earlier? Thanks, brain. They have to step up their game. They have to start refocusing. They maybe need to just start ignoring Genji. They know that they have the research, so unless they have scrim information, it's a little weird that they're banning Genji at all, other than the fact he's just a really solid hero.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I also can't help but feel that Ddung, from start to finish, they weren't able to handle the macro. And and that is oftentimes, you mentioned this, I think, during your cast with Calder during the Crucible in Europe as well, that there's oftentimes not so much a difference between the Open Division teams and the Pro Division teams in terms of mechanics and individual skill. It's all about the macro and decision-making. How do we approach the game, and how do we step forward? What is our plan? How do we plan ahead? And I think with that double global, it was just the easiest thing for Supernova there to really out-rotate them, get that big experience lead, and just snowball from there.
I mean, Cardo did a fantastic interview pre-Lulba qualifying for the Crucible or for HGC on his interview show Coffee with Caldor, where he did a fantastic interview where they talked about the differences between the Pro Division and the Open Division. And Lulba, the very first thing he said was, Open Division is a lot more team fighty. You will find yourself, if you are the team that will win in team fights, you'll likely win more Open Division games. Even if you're better at macro, that's not as important down there, because people will just fight when it seems dumb anyway.